And let's go.
Good morning and welcome everyone to a little early edition of the Bitcoin Morning Brief with Tone Base and Jimmy Song. Yesterday we had a story for you about Ghana's central bank, and we did, in Jimmy's tweet, it wasn't exactly clear whether there was fake news or news in the video. We did explain it that it was fake news, and there was just somebody, a finance person, saying he thinks it's a good idea. So he saw our tweet, Mr. Papa Wasa Chifi Ndum, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and said, that's not what the article said. I never said that they were going to add to the reserves, and he doesn't want to get in trouble with central bankers. So Mr. Chifi Ndum, rest assured, we clarified everything in the video. And please say hi to our mutual connections, which include Michael Goldstein, Max Kaiser, Pierre Rochard, and Seyfedin Amus. So he's quite well connected in the Twitter world. Just as a follow-up from yesterday. Then Jimmy took the time to write a nice article on Medium. Basically, you have to know that Jimmy spent the last 2 weeks, the holidays, programming some scripts on how to extract Bitcoin Diamond and Super Bitcoin from your wallets, and this is the result of your work. Right, Jimmy?
Yes, I think anyone that wants their 1% off of Bitcoin Diamond and Super Bitcoin and 0.1% from Bitcore should be able to get it. At least that's what I wanted to do. So I wrote this mostly for myself. The GitHub repository is here. You need Jupyter Notebook, and you can use tooling.ipynb. And this has all of the scripts that you need in order to do it. It's a bit technical. I'm going to try to clean it up so it's sort of like a one-click way to go and get your Bitcoin Diamond and everything else. And it's all open source. I put everything in there. This is based off of actually the library I built out of programming blockchain. So it's mostly the same code. I had to add some stuff in order to do some of the different signature hashing that these other coins require. But, you know, I want this information to be out there because I want people to be able to sell these if they are so inclined. Thank you, Bluecore, by the way, for the tip that you just gave me. That's very generous of you.
Tone, are you going to use Jimmy's service? Are you going to split off your Bitcoin?
It depends. How much is Jimmy going to charge me? Does 25% go to Jimmy?
We'll have to negotiate that, Tone.
Yeah, I mean, I've been traveling a lot. I've actually been meaning to pull out all my private keys to kind of sell Bitcoin Gold. But my standard is 5%. Like, I'm waiting for the Bitcoin Gold pump. Everything else is pumping. Bitcoin Gold is like the only altcoin that I own by default, because I haven't pulled out my private keys yet. I pulled them all. I pulled all my Bcash private keys out. I sold that at 10%, and I'll sell Bitcoin Gold at 5%. And but yeah, Jimmy makes it easier. Once I pull those private keys out, man, my programming days are so far behind me. But this could be an interesting little weekend project to try and figure out how to use those scripts. And yeah, I guess sell all that nonsense and increase the amount of Bitcoin that I hold.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, check that post out, and maybe Jimmy can help you to to get it done. Next story, we have China. Interesting one, where basically, since even before they shut down the exchanges, we had constant rumors about China banning Bitcoin here, China banning Bitcoin there. Now we have a story coming out from credible sources, not necessarily CCN, but we have Reuters and the business paper Kaijin saying that central regulators, so the Central Bank of China and some others, they held a meeting where they would tell local governments who control the resources to not give preferential treatment to Bitcoin miners anymore. And the backstory here is, of course, that a lot of the mining is centralized in China because they get cheap electricity, subsidized electricity, and tax cuts and all this kind of stuff. with the motivation that the local officials, they can meet their GDP target. That's a very important incentive for them to do that. Tone, why don't you go ahead and comment on this?
I mean, this was totally expected. Once China went after the ICOs and a lot of the exchanges shut down, a lot of us speculated, well, they're gonna go after mining as well. They're not gonna be subsidizing mining with electricity forever. Now, a lot of these miners by now have very good connections with a lot of these electric plants, with a lot of these local officials. I'm sure there is lots of money being handed down under the table. But when the top of the line government starts to come down on them, China does seem to be one of the only countries in the world that is actively going after corruption, which is what is needed. China is the only country on pace. I'm not saying they're going to get there, and I'm not saying they're going to be there tomorrow. But if there is a country that will become, the next global superpower when America's reign ends, and America's reign is going to end, maybe not tomorrow, but probably in about 5 to 10 years, maybe 15 years, China is best in line. And the reason why China is best in line is because for the last 10 years, I've been reading articles about them going after, corruption and corrupt politicians. That's kind of how it starts. You need regulated markets, and you need the world to trust that you are running your country in the least corrupt way. Like, I know it sounds a lot. Like, people think that America is corrupt, but it's probably one of the least corrupt. And no, little countries like Hong Kong or Singapore are not going to be, the global capital of the world. So that's where it's going, and let's see what they do. I always knew that mining was going to get more decentralized sooner or later. China was not going to continue to subsidize them. Hey, Jimmy, I think I lost my stream. Okay, I think it's back. Never mind. It was going to get broken up for no other reason other than eventually, when the mining reward is small, I think the majority of the miners, and we have Lightning, so the transaction fees are smaller. I do see mining become more of a hobby, mining become more of another expense on your balance sheet if you're a big company that needs Bitcoin and it's part of your business. Like, I'll always be running one miner. Like, I don't care if that miner makes me any money or not. I'll always be running one miner, which I'll be updating soon when Canon and Avalon/Canon, release the new miner. I'll be making sure to pick one up so I can just upgrade my one miner. So I see this. I don't see this as a bad thing. Like I said, I've been on the side of the Chinese government in this warpath for the last year and a half, right? So I have no problem with this either.
Jimmy, your thoughts?
I don't believe that they're benevolent at all. I see this as more of a play of a lot of the government officials know the miners make a ton of money. We know Bitmain, for example, probably made close to $500 million last year, just based on the raw numbers. I can't imagine that they would let a domestic industry that's that strong go without some sort of regulation, because they're an authoritarian government and they want their piece of the pie. They're not going to let people make all sorts of money without at least taxing them or something. And it's an unregulated industry. They want to bring regulation to it. That's what authoritarian governments do. I also disagree with Tone in the sense that I don't think America is going away in the next 15 years. I doubt that's going to happen. Regime change does tend to happen quickly when it does, but it takes a long time before it gets there.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
But historically, very few countries last over 100 years. At least that's been the last 500 years of history. And U.S. is already pushing that boundary. So from a historical, regress to the mean, we got about 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, the longer it lasts, the longer it tends to last. It's one of those weird things.
Lindy's law, right?
Yeah.
So I've researched China quite a bit through my publication, and basically the only way that China can overtake the United States is if they get rid of the communist system, not just in part, but in total.
Well, they've been trying, right? They've been trying.
Nope. The Communist Party is very much at the center of everything. That's why it's still one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And Xi Jinping, the current leader, he's only cracking down on corruption because he's getting rid of his political enemy. He's now the man in charge, the real dictator. And as long as that doesn't change, China doesn't have a chance. Their system prevents innovation, like all communist systems, and they've by far the worst debt problem in the world, much worse than we have, with leverage and overcapacity that's never going to yield a return.
Yeah, all those like empty cities and stuff like that, building things that aren't needed.
That's the growth model. They have zero innovation, and that's ultimately what gives the United States an advantage. Now, obviously, things here aren't perfect either. It's always good to think in relative terms, and you can check out some of my reporting on my website on that. But we'll see what happens, right? In 15, 20 years, we're still going to be young enough to go and pull up that video and see whether we're all going to be in China or not. With respect to the Bitcoin miners, we turned this into a geopolitical discussion. There's one thing to note that, and this has also been, I've seen that all over with any central directive, as long as the local governments have something to say in the matter, any central directive will be at least watered down or take time to implement. And that's different from when they shut down the exchanges, because the local government had nothing to do with that. There was a centralized central regulator could do that easily. But anytime when it comes to cutting capacity, slowing down lending, slowing down construction, all this kind of stuff, the local governments, they will say, yep, and then they don't do it. And then it takes a while to actually get it done. So this may take a while until it's fully implemented.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Great.
So next story, we've got some good news, at least some, no, that's the bad news. That's the BitPay. I thought we were with Chris Larsen already. So BitPay, Jimmy pulled up this tweet. It says, BitPay is charging an extra fee for transactions. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm not sure which one's the actual miner fee and which one BitPay is just sort of taking for themselves. But they separated it out, and they have a network cost now in addition to a miner fee. I guess that's just money that BitPay is taking for themselves, and it's it kind of seems pretty ridiculous. You're sending about $260 and they're taking $20. You know, I don't know. They should be ashamed of themselves if this is really what they're doing with BIP70.
The mining fee also looks a little excessive.
Yeah, totally excessive. Yeah, for the amount of bitcoins that's being sent. I don't know. Maybe this particular transaction has like 100 outputs. Doesn't seem very likely, but maybe it does. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, guys, stop using BitPay. Stop using Coinbase. Stop using blockchain.info. Stop using these freaking companies that refuse to lower your mining fees and or network fees or whatever the hell it is by not adopting SegWit.
No, I mean, they just seem like technical dinosaurs to me. I've worked at a lot of companies where what tends to happen is the code base rots and nobody really knows the entire code base except like one or two people, and those people have long since left. And what ends up happening is that everyone is just afraid to change anything. And that seems, I'm guessing that's kind of what's happening with these companies. And that's why they wanted a block size increase so bad, because they wouldn't actually have to innovate or change their code base. They could just let the network take care of it. Instead, they have to do the code, and it feels like they are sort of dragging their feet because they don't know what they'll mess up. They're already sort of behemoths in that regard, and they don't really want to change things.
So a tweeter called BRDRNKR, he commented on that, and he said, "Don't be lazy and avoid BitPay, blockchain, and Coinbase at all costs." That's way at the bottom. It's at the bottom.
At the bottom?
Yeah.
I don't see
You don't see it?
No.
Oh,
Okay. All right.
Anyway, he's got a point. If you don't want to pay fees, don't use their service. Now we go to the good news, at least the good news for Chris Larsen, who was one of the founders of Ripple and is now the richest man in the world, basically. Jimmy.
Yeah, at least nominally. There's 100 billion Ripple out in existence, and he controls. He has a 37% stake, so 37 billion Ripple. Ripple is trading above $3. It's like $3.30 or something last I checked. So that gives him over $100 billion of value. He is actually a richer person than Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, at least nominally. This is kind of scary and hilarious and interesting, and this is kind of how crazy crypto has gotten, that this guy that's not even the CEO of Ripple anymore. I think he was CEO back in 2002. After Jed McCaleb came onto Ripple and created Ripples, he left for Stellar. I think he took a bunch of the money or a bunch of the Ripples, so he has like the largest stake. His 37% stake is worth more than Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. How crazy is that? How crazy is that?
Well, Tone, why don't you tell us how crazy this is?
I mean, the Ripple thing is really, really bothering me. Right? Like it's the Ripple garbage is really bothering me. I mean, there's the three guys, right? There's Jed McCaleb, Chris Larsen, and I think Ryan Fugger is like the third guy. And yeah, it's to me they're all scammers, right? And I think this is going to end so badly. There will be like the future Wolf of Wall Street type movie, and it might center around Ripple. And I mean, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. It's just hype. It's an unnecessary, useless token. If God forbid they actually make some kind of technology that's useful, the token is certainly not needed, and anyone will just use their technology without the token. They can use it internally. This is no different than all the hype that we heard about Ethereum last year or earlier this year. All the banks are using Ethereum. No, they're not. Not a single bank is going to use the Ethereum token. They're not that dumb. I mean, if Ethereum has some kind of useful code, they'll just use the code internally in their database. If Ripple ever has some kind of code which is useful, which I highly, highly doubt, some bank will just use that code internally. They're not going to use the stupid Ripple token. This is just hype. And it's unfortunate that people are getting caught up in it. I tried preventing people from getting caught in the hype a year ago when the price of this thing was like 5 or 10 cents with Peter Todd, one of the more respected developers we have in the space. I tried explaining the nonsense. I tried explaining what a scammer Jed McCaleb was, who should be imprisoned instead of Mark Karpelès, who, in my opinion, after doing that research, Karpelès didn't really do anything wrong. It was Jed McCaleb. I don't understand how that didn't come out during the trial. The emails are right there. They're public knowledge now. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I want to create like a coin with 100 trillion units and sell them for like fractions of a penny, and become the richest person, at least nominally. That's my plan in case this Bitcoin thing doesn't work out.
So yeah, I guess Ripple's gonna still be with us for a little bit.
Honestly, at this point, I think the best thing to happen would be for the value of one Ripple to go all the way to about $100, like, and get everyone in. Like, honestly, I want everyone because I know Ripple. I know there's nothing there. I know there's no technology there. I know it's unsustainable. So I think the best thing is for Ripple to be that Mississippi bubble, for Ripple to be that tulip, right? So at this point, you want the value of the Ripple to start going so high that people are too dumb to actually sell out of it, and then to cause that actual bubble.
Are you shorting it?
God, no, I'm not that. No, I can't find this stuff. Look, like I think I mentioned it. Was it on this show yesterday? Like I started, I learned how to trade in like I think it was like '03, '04 is when I learned how to trade. And my first attempt at trading and becoming a professional trader was to short a home builders in 2005. So needless to say, I almost went broke shorting the home builders in 2005 and literally set back my trading by years by mistiming the real estate bubble by 1 year. So no, I'm not shorting Ripple.
Okay, last story, positive one, is this time talking about Ripple and what can it do? 100 transactions. Bitcoin with Lightning Network can do how many transactions, Jimmy?
It can do thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, potentially. Depends on the number of channels. Each channel by itself can do thousands of transactions per second if you have a high enough bandwidth connection.
And now we have, of all people, the Royal Bank of Canada, of all companies, coming out and saying, doing a thorough report, saying that both SegWit and the Lightning Network are positive for Bitcoin scaling.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a look at the report?
I couldn't find it anywhere. I just saw Francis Pulio's tweet that has a couple of pages out of it, but it's pretty accurate about on-chain versus off-chain scaling and things like that. Very exciting stuff. I'm kind of surprised that it was the Royal Bank of Canada that figured this out, and that's a very good thing. Yeah, it's hilarious because there's a lot of people saying there's going to be an ICO for the Lightning Network. And a lot of people are commenting on it, and this is sort of like the FUD going around these days. But yeah, Lightning looks very promising. I mean, like, people are very impatient for it, especially a lot of the Bitcoin Cash people are saying, well, it's not there now, so therefore it's useless. Guys, you just need to be patient. This is technology. This is like OS level technology that you need to test very thoroughly. It's not going to get there in 6 weeks like a website would. And if it does get there in 6 weeks, I wouldn't trust it because it doesn't have enough testing if it takes that short. So I think the technology is there. It'll get there. We'll see if people use it.
Yeah, I saw a video by a Bitcoin Cash supporter, and he was complaining, oh, no, we limited the block size. And he literally said, oh, we could have increased the block size for years before we found other solutions. Yeah, like the Lightning Network. I mean, what other solutions are you talking about, if not off-chain scaling? Anyway, tone to you.
Yeah, it's crazy how these people just think that they can wave a magic wand and the entire world converts to a bigger block size without anyone forking off. I mean, I think these people, these big blockers, they're just delusional, thinking that they have the power to force everyone to upgrade their nodes, which is crazy, right? And that was what the user-activated soft fork was about. But in this case, look, I'm actually not surprised that this came out of Canada, right? Because if people like Francis, if people like Rodolfo Novak, if people like Sunny Ray, I mean, these are people in Canada. I mean, if these are the people that are advising these banks and these researchers, then yeah, the research is going to be good. When Ripple people and Ethereum people start reaching out and try to be advisors, everything turns to kind of shit, right? So I mean, all this research, all of these banks, all of these central banks, all of these governments, it really depends on who is advising you, right? Is it Andreas Antonopoulos showing up, or is it Vitalik Buterin that still wants to build a quantum computer, for God knows what reason? So like, who's showing up? Like, is it a child, or is it an adult, right? Is it someone who tries to get rich, or is it someone that actually understands the technology and what and where it's going and why it was developed, right? So Yeah, looks like the report would be very, very interesting. Francis, please post a link to the report. Everyone is asking. I tried Googling for it, couldn't find it. So maybe it's not fully out yet, but if it is, that'd be great.
Until it is fully out, we'll have to do with you looking at the price tone.
Oh wait, let me just give you the weather report real quick.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, Jimmy, we're skipping the web pool. It's not all that exciting.
Well, so it's calmed down a little bit in the last few hours. So I mean, you may be able to get in with like a 200 Satoshi per byte fee. It's still kind of stormy out there. You know, yeah, I'm hoping that these get eaten today, but it might take a while. I think if you definitely need your transactions in today, you need to pay somewhere between 300 and 500 Satoshi per byte.
Okay, price now.
All right, let's go take a look. Let me open up the page first. Here we go. Let's do screen share, and here we go. Yeah, so it was looking really, really good. Like yesterday morning when we were doing the show, it was looking like we were breaking out of the triangle. The last 2 days has been trying to break out of the triangle. Once again, this number is flipping between a green 5 and a red 1. We're slightly pulling back into the triangle. You do want this breakout to be a little bit bigger. Trying to adjust this triangle, like people are like, oh, how come you drew your triangle that way? I kind of just drew a best fit line, right? So if we adjust it a little bit, it actually looks like we're even further broke out. Like I'm just trying to like create a best fit line here, right? So adjusting it slightly. If I had drawn it this way, like touching more of the tops of these candles and this wick and the top of this candle, it looks like we have fully broken out. Now, here's the thing on a daily chart. On a daily chart, unfortunately, and again, adjust for your exchange accordingly, on a daily chart, we never traded above the prior number, right? And even like right now, with this green 3 is not really trading above a green 2. So it's like, it's a matter of like inches, but like the daily just has not broken out, giving you a buy indication, which is unfortunate. I still think, I mean, considering the complete and utter garbage like Ripple going up to $3, like Bitcoin is grossly undervalued. I mean, grossly undervalued. So I am not worried at all about Bitcoin. If it doesn't break out here, it's going to break out. I personally do not think that this fall is a direct result of Wall Street and futures trading. I think the futures trading is at the moment fairly insignificant to the price of Bitcoin. I think that perhaps this run up from this area of 7,500 or this area of 10,000, I think this run up was a little bit speculative based on Wall Street getting in with their futures. So maybe we got a little bit out of hand going up over here, and now we're just coming back down to reality. I don't think the futures are the cause of the fall. I think it's speculation that drove us up, and now the reality is driving us down. It's the perfect, buy the rumor, sell the news event. So the daily chart is just on the verge of breaking out. So, but I will say that I guess it's time for me to put a range in here. So if we look at a price range, if we look at the top of 20,000, the bottom of the triangle is about 10,000. So I mean, it is looking a bit like a breakout. So maybe I can put this in, and this needs to go all the way up to like 10,000, right? I mean, that's the triangle breakout, right? We just got to make sure you don't go down. So if that is your target, which is pretty high actually. That's a $25,000 target, right? Looking at a $10,000 breakout, because that's the fat part of the triangle. That's what I'm looking at now. It may seem a little crazy. And recently people have been asking about stop losses. Well, if you're a daily trader and you already entered this trade to the upside, where's your initial stop loss? Well, your initial stop loss will probably be right here, right in this area here, because if it gets back there, you're now back below the triangle. You're now back below the 50-day moving average. And I mean, ideally, this should have been like also below this Fibonacci, but that's okay. That's your current stop loss. I know it's wide, but it's not as wide as your target, right? So your risk reward is still okay. If you get one more good day, you definitely raise that stop loss to today's low. It's kind of what we're looking at. Here's the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour chart did go bullish a little bit over here because this was a 2 at one point. So there was a trade on the table. Your stop loss would have been here. The stop loss would have been already hit. And this has now gone beyond a 1 to 4 candle correction than higher. This is now trending to the downside. I would not take on this trade. But see, this is where the 4-hour chart goes bearish. The 4-hour chart goes bearish right there, but the higher level time frame of daily is still on a green 3 without any bearish indication. So this is where, you know, if you like to trade the 4-hour chart, you could have shorted, but very, very dangerous, especially going against the daily chart with the weekly currently in neutral stance. The 1-hour chart did give you a 9, right? So the 1-hour chart gave you a little bit of a bounce as of a few hours ago. We're under the 50-hour moving average. You're between 2 setup trend lines. This is another support line here. This is actually a stop loss if you go long on this trade. The 4-hour just went bearish, so putting the 4-hour and the 1-hour together, a 1 to 4-hour bounce and then lower to be in line with the 4-hour chart. Maybe the 4-hour chart needs to give you another 9 to the downside, you know, go from 9 to 9 to 9. That seems to be a reasonable trade here, right? We had a couple of 9s, 1 to 4 candle correction, then continuation. This 9 fully reversed us. Will this 9 fully reverse us? It's looking likely. So maybe a little bit more weakness on the 4-hour, take us back to the beginning of the triangle, you know, maybe back down to like 14,000. If we go back to 14,000, that still keeps us right in here, right? Go back down into this point, maybe beat the 50-day one more time, and then bounce. So I'm still leaning bullish, but I was hoping the breakout would be a little bit stronger, then a pullback, then higher. This is just too weak of a breakout to consider it, to really trust the triangle breakout. At the least, I want to see new highs above this orange line. That's pretty much it for me. Forgot my little disclaimers. The Learn Trading section of Liberty Life Trail. Please read it. The stuff I just talked about is in section 6. And I added my seminar in LA. I put down Saturday, February 10th. I believe 3 or 4 people already showed serious interest, so I got to update seats remaining. It will only be 20 people, like most of my seminars, and there's only 7 seats left for Singapore in 2 weeks, or less than 2 weeks now, 10 days. All right, guys, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tone. We all hope that that breakout was going to be a bit more vicious, but I guess we all have to get into a Ripple to get some more upside. Okay, well, thanks everybody for watching. And Jimmy, your last words.